Let's escape toxic Buddhism. This morning's lesson is drawn from a good-hearted question found on Reddit that begins, I'm frustrated that my mother, while always encouraging and supporting my own Buddhist practice, financially, emotionally, etc., chooses to embrace New Age spirituality instead of Dharma. Look, I don't know what this is. I'm not really asking for advice. But I don't feel like venting either. My mom accepts the Buddha was an enlightened being. She accepts that high lamas like Mingyur Dorje, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and other figures are enlightened. And she always supported my Buddhist practice in the past, having paid for my retreats, driving me long distance to Dharma centers. Just amazingly supportive stuff. We often agree on spiritual matters, but when we discuss things, we hit an impasse always. By the way, I want to stop this too, just to compliment the person who wrote this question for being so eloquent and having such a command of the English language. Let's continue. We hit an impasse always. She takes a pre-ennialist New Age view of things. She used to be mostly I have trouble pronouncing this word, Advaita, which I liked and thought had some similarities to Buddha Dharma. Yes, it is a favorite of many Zen teachers. Let's continue. But lately, she's gone beyond that to New Age YouTube talks about divine manifestations, talking about ascended beings like Jesus Christ, the Buddha, etc. Just a bunch of nonsense. So we'll stop right here. How do you know it's nonsense? Let us not fall into the trap of chauvinism. Now, back in the 70s, chauvinism became associated with male chauvinism, and male chauvinism is a very ugly thing associated with patriarchy, wherein only heterosexual males are considered good and everyone else is considered bad. And that's appalling. And it's also absurd. But with various forms of chauvinism, we seem to think, well, if I was born on Earth, then Earth must be the center of the universe. And if I was born into a Christian family, then Christianity must be the one true religion. And that's not unique to Christianity. That's unique to humanity. We are all like that. If I'm born into fill in the blank, then fill in the blank must be the one true religion. You know, if I prefer to paraphrase Jane Austen, if they prefer sauté, then anyone who prefers ragu is beneath contempt. So that type of self-centeredness. Remember, we can learn so much from the life story of the Buddha, whether it was literal or allegoric. The Buddha was a very clever fellow. Before he was the Buddha, he was Gautama. Before he was Gautama, he was Siddhartha, the prince. and as a prince who was raised not only with privilege and power and prestige, but with education, both martial education and intellectual education, because he was expected to lead troops and a nation. So he was no intellectual slouch, but he did not think his way to nirvana. He practiced his way to nirvana. He tried the teachings of one teacher. He didn't like where they took him. He practiced the teachings of a second teacher. He didn't like where they took him. He practiced the teachings of the forest ascetics. He didn't like where that took him. Finally, he stumbled upon something that seemed to work really well for him. He mastered that path and spent the rest of his life sharing it with others. So, contrary to the ravings of patriarchy, the Buddha was very humble. He said, this seemed to work for me. Maybe it'll work for you too. Here's what I do. If we were to be Buddhists, let us follow in the Buddha's footsteps. Let us test teachings in the laboratory of our body and mind and notice the results they give us. Let us not be slaves to preconception. Let's continue. But in the past I learned that arguing with her and arguing for Buddhist views would only backfire. Well, I'm glad you learned that. That's important. But internally, I just wonder, why doesn't she embrace the Dharma and give up these New Age interests that I believe are just a mess of distorted and warped fusions of caricature of various mystical traditions mashed together? Yes, this is what that sounds very much like what the 14th Dalai Lama refers to as Dharma soup. So here's the reason why. Brace yourself, this will not be comfortable. Patriarchy. There is spiritual patriarchy and spiritual matriarchy, as explored by the Tao Te Ching, referring to them spiritual patriarchy as yang and spiritual matriarchy as yin. Now you might say, dude, I'm not a Taoist, I'm a Buddhist. Fine. Consider the Buddha. Before he received the nickname Buddha, he was known as Gautama. And he had a wicked, wicked cousin named Devadatta, who thought it would be absolutely splendid to be rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. And in the short term, he got all sorts of really interesting things happen. He manifested his desire. He divided the Buddha's Sangha. He took a certain portion of the Buddha's students, a certain portion of the Buddha's patrons, and established his own school. But it wasn't sustainable, and eventually they all forsook him. This week I stumbled upon a study was brought to my attention that showed that the more patriarchal of organization is, rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, the more enthusiastic its devotees are. But they don't experience peace, they don't experience freedom, they don't experience enlightenment. Whereas the more flexible, loving, rational, laid-back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind an organization is, typically the less wealth it has, the less students it has, but those who do hang out there are much more peaceful, much more happy, much more enlightened. Sturgeon's Law reminds us that 90% of everything sucks, but not in the fun, tingly way. Which would go a long way to explain why such a high percentage of the population are drawn to these attributes. Regardless of what side of the aisle you paint yourself as, So many politicians rely on being rigid and fearful and superstitious and controlling. And so much political rhetoric elicits and appeals to these latent attributes within human beings. Very, very statistically, very few rely on people being flexible, loving, rational, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind, even though studies have shown this is the only sustainable way for humans to get along and thrive. Have we ever wondered why so many villains are charismatic? Or Adolf Hitler's, or Jim Jones, or David Koresh's. In the Christian New Testament, 1 Corinthians 13, we see a dichotomy. A dichotomy is drawn between vertical devotion, between a human and a parental, or between a human and a parent, or a human and a parental figure, physical or celestial. And that's contrasted with the horizontal love. And it works like this. It's best illustrated with bovine. A calf sticks next to its mom. It's wired to do so by evolution. Being close to its mom means it's close to its mom's udders, food, and it's close to its mom's horns, protection. Once the calf becomes a tween, a toddler, an adolescent, at a certain point, a switch is thrown, and they're ready to reproduce. And all of a sudden, they are no longer drawn to mother's udders or mother's horns. Instead of feeling a vertical devotion for mom, they feel a horizontal love and compassion for the rest of the herd. Not just those they wish to mate with, but the herd overall. They seek the approval of the herd, and they seek the safety and well-being of the herd. This is wired into us. The spiritually immature are drawn to these attributes. The spiritually mature are drawn to these attributes. A lot of people choose the spiritual systems that you just outlined because they, on one hand, they recognize a need for spirituality, but on the other hand, they have no use for patriarchy. They have no use for systems that make people become more rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. Many decades ago, I was a member of a Christian cult. I escaped. A friend of mine from the cult also escaped at different times. Both of us independently found our way to a Buddhist cult. Once I recognized it was a cult, I left. She didn't. Decades have elapsed. And bless her heart, she still feels that being rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel is an amazing way to lead life. I feel the opposite, that folks are happier being flexible, loving, rational, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. So both of us are carbon-based life forms. Both of us are moderately educated. Both of us are raised in the same culture, in the same language, on the same continent. And yet, one of us really loved yang, patriarchy. One of us really loved yin, matriarchy. So, if you are all about Buddhism or Taoism or Hinduism, and the people in your life who will love you and respect you and supportive aren't, it may be that they are picking up on a vague aura of patriarchy, either from your teachers, brace yourself, or from your community, or from you. Now, I'm not going to tell you to be all things to all people. I'm not going to tell you to be a disingenuous salesman for the Buddha. But I'm going to tell you that your peace and your happiness is directly affected by which lens you view the Buddha's teachings. Do you view the Buddha's teachings through the lens of patriarchy or through the lens of matriarchy? You will always find Buddhists who will rejoice in being rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. Many people from Buddhist countries are raised in cultures that condition them to have this worldview. But if you're a diligent student, you'll find there will always going to be luminaries, often rare, who are drawn, often against their wishes, towards the path of matriarchy, towards the path of being flexible, loving, rational, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. And we also see it in reverse. We see that, well, think about this. Think about seafood. Now, clearly I'm a vegan, but this is a wonderful example. Wherever you go on the planet where people fish for crabs, when you go to a wharf, you'll find these large containers. And these days, those containers are blue, rounded off square structures full of crabs. And occasionally, you'll see one crab try to make a break for it. And his fellows will pull him back in an effort to maintain the status quo. Now, that is common in systems dynamics. It's not unique to crustaceans. It's a universal phenomena in complex life forms. But those who are rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel are horrified when someone has caught the virus of being flexible, loving, rational, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. And for the sake of protecting their quote-unquote soul and the souls of their students, they will do everything they can to drag them or their students or their teachings back into the path of patriarchy. Allow me to share an example for you. During the Buddha's lifetime, people were, his own cousin tried to distort the teachings and divide the Sangha, blah, blah, blah. How much more so after his death? And so the history of Buddhism is often punctuated by the appearance and then disappearance of reformers of Buddhism. Some were super, super patriarchal, and a few were very, very matriarchal. One of my favorite matriarchal reformers of Buddhism, well, two of them. One of them is from China, and his name is, do I remember how to pronounce his name? I don't. It's the author of the Song of Enlightenment. He was a reformer. And another is a guy from the Swat Valley, known in Sanskrit as Prahivajra. The Tibetans call him Gaurab Dorje. He's considered to be the founder of Dzogchen, or at least the first human teacher of Dzogchen. And when you read the oldest text attributed to him, it is completely free of rigidity and dogma and ritual. And it is a simple, easy, effective path. And over the years, people who were members of patriarchy forbade others from reading it unless they first spent decades being indoctrinated into patriarchy so they could be sure to view his texts through the lens of patriarchy. And they call it a restricted text. Oh, how convenient that patriarchy restricts texts that disagree with patriarchy. That stands in sharp contrast to what the Buddha said as he lay dying, as recorded in the Mahayana Nirvana Sutta, or Sutra. He explained, and I paraphrase, "I have taught with an outstretched arm and an open hand, keeping no secrets." The Buddha on the path of matriarchy was egalitarian, keeping no secrets. Those on the path of patriarchy are elitist and controlling. They love their secrets. So there's always been a few luminaries. I'm thinking about, what comes to right now is Karma Jigme, who seemed to be dragged against his will from patriarchy to matriarchy. A generation or two later, the same thing happened with Za Paltrul Rinpoche. As a young man, he wrote a very, very, very patriarchal text known as The Words of My Perfect Teacher. As a very, very old man, most likely his last meditation manual was very, very matriarchal. The Heart Treasure of the Enlightened Ones. So the first half of the first part of my spiritual journey was defined by texts such as that. Then I had my spiritual awakening or dawning, because it was a gradual process, and I found myself drawn to the teachings of matriarchy. If the people around us who seem to love us and seem to be interested in the spiritual things are not interested in our path, it is because our teachers or our companions or ourself, if there is such a thing, stink of patriarchy, which they recognize as a toxin. Let's continue. She lives according to Buddhist ethics and compassion so well. So I just feel, why can't she embrace the right view? So let's explore that for a second. The first Lam Rim, the essence of the Buddha's path is simply the Eightfold Path. Enlightenment is nothing more than mastery of the Eightfold Path. As a child, I found tying my shoes to be a daunting task. After much time, much effort, and much tears, eventually I got so good at tying my shoes that I could do so spontaneously, habitually, easily, and effectively. It is possible to also master the Buddha's Eightfold Path that way. 50% of that Eightfold Path pertains to loving kindness. Remember, the Buddha was fond of describing all phenomena in terms of four categories: the circumstantial, the physical, the interpersonal, and the mental. We see this mentioned in Buddhist Tantra, in generation stage Tantra, when one is taught to wish that all beings' minds be as wise as a Buddha's bija, that all beings' relationships be as loving as a Buddha's mantra, that all beings' forms be as healthy as is depicted by the Yadam, and that all beings' circumstances be as safe and bountiful as is depicted in Buddhist lore of a Buddha's paradise or pure land or vati. So these four bases of mindfulness, this satipatthana, is found in each sect of Buddhism, albeit with different names. 50% of the Buddha's Eightfold Path pertains to mental morality, verbal morality, behavior morality, and circumstantial morality. And they're all predicated simply upon kindness. The great Karma Jigme, lauded by the Dalai Lama, taught the essence of all morality. The essence of the hundreds of Praktimoksha vows is simply non-violence. Why does your mom drawn to Buddhist ethics? Because every healthy human is wired for empathy. Each of us come with a factory-installed hunk of meat that kind of looks like a baseball glove. Its name is the anterior cingulate gyrus. It functions as the hub of our mirror neurons, the seat of empathy and compassion and love. So here's the wild thing. People who practice the patriarchal path are wired to just be continually lighting up their amygdala, the seat of aggression and anxiety. Those who traverse the path of matriarchy are always lighting up their anterior cingulate gyrus, their sympathetic nervous system, and their parasympathetic nervous systems, the neurological seat of vulnerable perception, physical and mental release, and empathy. This can be verified by functional magnetic resonance imaging studies. The essence of Buddhist ethics is just living in harmony with the neural pathways of mindfulness, meditation, and empathy. She lives according to Buddhist ethics and compassion so well, so I just feel, why can't she embrace right view? That's because most people teach right view the wrong way. Most people teach right view as this mysterious thing crouched in vague language that can only be understood after great austerities and the acquiring of PhDs or degrees of Geshe or Kenpo or Kenshin. But did you know that in the Satipatthana Sutta, the second to last passage, the Buddha promised it is possible to master his path in less than 7 years, or 7 quarters, or 7 months, or 7 fortnights, or 7 weeks, or even 7 days. You can't get a PhD in 7 days. The only way that makes sense is if the path is easier than we've been led to believe, and it is. When reading the Buddha's most concise meditation manual, the Anapanasati Sutta, we learn that the essence of view is simply in impermanence. Not in believing it, but being vulnerable to it, because it's always there, whether we like it or not. Seasons change, the moon waxes and wanes, the sun rises and sets, our chest swells and sinks with every breath. Ever changing one and all, there is nothing permanent to grasp. When we have a healthy practice of mindfulness and meditation, practicing at least 5 minutes every 12 hours or so, the perception of change, the change of sights, the change of sounds, the change of sensations, the change of flavors, the change of sense and the like, the change of emotions, the changing of intentions, the changing of thoughts, the changing of memories, the changing of imaginings. The perception of these things is an inevitability. So one is not compassionate because one is Buddhist. One is compassionate because one is a healthy human being, and that is what we are wired to do. One does not relax into release because we've memorized archaic tomes, but because we have evolved to be that way. Most of us go through life with our hands over our eyes when they aren't over our ears, trying valiantly to ignore the specter of change, the specter of impermanence that chases us like a monster in a child's dream. And so the perception of this is inevitable. Anyone who is healthy can perceive change. Anyone who is healthy is drawn to kindness. Your mother appears to be healthy. Mazel tov. Let's continue. I love her and just want to see, I love her and just want to see the best for her. I'm not saying I'm moving much closer to enlightenment myself in this life. So let's stop right there. If you're not, then it's time to find a new teacher. If your teacher says it's going to take lifetimes or the length of time equal to the birth and sustenance and death and intermediate state or intervening state of 3 universes, find a new teacher. Buddha said this could be done in a week. Come on now. But I feel she could attain enlightenment much more, that she should, but I feel that she could attain enlightenment much more easily than I could. If she just embraced Buddhism, but that these New Age views prevent that. So, let us not overestimate the power of thoughts. We're more governed by belief. And let us not overestimate the power of belief. We're more governed by drives. We have 2 reward systems lurking in the basement of our brain. The dopamine-oriented reward system and the oxytocin-oriented reward system. One that rewards with pleasure, one that rewards with fulfillment. These are the things that drive us, regardless of how dishonest we are with ourselves or with others. So it isn't the beliefs that keep your mom where she's at. It's probably her aversion to patriarchy and the preconceptions concerning that. If you want, forgive me for misquoting Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world. If your mom isn't captivated by her perception of matriarchy in your teachers, or matriarchy in your fellows, or matriarchy in you, if she still sees you as a squalling infant whose nappies she changed, then this is a great opportunity for you to evolve, to master the Buddha's path of matriarchy, to transcend the toxic analog of Buddhism, which is supplanted matriarchal Buddhism. Alas, we live in an age where the foxes guard the hen house and the patients are running the asylum, striving to cure their physicians of their sanity. You can change that. You can be this wonderful, you can be like a lighthouse that prevents ships from running aground and sinking on jagged rocks. Not through elegant prose, but through your vibes. Dogs are all about vibes. They've been said to be the kings and queens of interspecies friendship, which means they communicate primarily through body language and scent. Now, I'm not asking you to prance about the countryside on all fours, striving to sniff the tachasses of strangers, for such things are frowned upon in polite society. But your vibes can intrigue people, or your vibes can repel people. Let us practice the essence of the Buddha's teachings in a way that makes us so effortlessly magnetic that people are drawn to the matriarchal view of his teachings. I do look forward to practicing with you after approximately, after approximately 30 seconds of housekeeping. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I spent more than 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each sect of Buddhism and Taoism and Hinduism and Judaism and Christianity, so that you would not have to. Welcome, my friends, to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. Let us play with the latest iteration of easy meditation based upon the final meditation manual of Dzogchen Rinpoche, Heart Treasure of the Enlightened Ones, wherein one views this statue not as an entity to be supplicated or worshipped, but as an archetype to help us train and love and release. Let us take a moment to review the meaning of the mantra. And of course, if at any point during this live stream you have a specific question about Buddhist chanting, Buddhist meditation, Buddhist philosophy, or their application, please type your question in great detail in the chat window. And once YouTube takes its sweet time to delivering it to me, I will be happy to answer it. Please chant with me. I invoke the wish of healing molecule that serves as a metaphor of love, and the Pei lotus of purity serving as a metaphor of release, with whom I supplicate may love and release be mastered by all. So I'm a silly vegan, and this morning I had a nightmare where I was in a scenario for some reason where people were trying to induce me to eat bugs, great big bugs, the size of lobsters. And the lobsters weren't having anything to do. They weren't pleased with that at all. And they were trying to eat me back. It was terrible, I tell you. And as I hear background noise, I cannot help but think the bugs are coming for me. The great big lobster-like bugs. They want a piece of me. So what an apropos opportunity to bring the 5 thoughts into the path of awareness and release. Please chant with me. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever emotion we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as non-graspable as a vast empty void. As we inhale, here's what we can do. We can take all these words, we can compress them into just 6 syllables, 3 of which that we can silently, mentally, and passively recite during our inhalation and our exhalation. And I'm going to do a quick visual edit because I'm funny that way. So, as we inhale, we can silently, mentally, and passively recite these 6 syllables. And as we exhale, we can physically relax as best we can while striving to chant these 6 syllables 8 times per breath. And please, if this is new to you, please give yourself permission to have a learning curve. Om mani mimi yung, 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 om mani mimi yung. And now let us rest our mind. And here's how that works. What is the key to mindfulness? To silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this during our inhalation as we kick back and watch the antics of our mind as it perceives, emotes, intends, reasons, recalls, and imagines. What is the essence of meditation? To silently, mentally, and passively recite the 1-syllable verb ease during our exhalation while relaxing into mind's non-graspable nature. During each inhalation, thanks to our sympathetic nervous system, we are already wired to perceive vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. Yes, the nudity of Samantabhadra, Samantabhadri, Karamamudara remind us of that vulnerability. Every time we exhale, we are wired to physically relax and mentally release, thus causing whatever it is we noticed during our previous inhalation to begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable as a vast empty void, like the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which, although is tantalizing to the eye, is non-graspable to the hand. This non-graspability is typified in the artwork wherein we see Kuntuzangpo and Kuntuzangmo Yabyum depicted as being as translucent and non-graspable as a rainbow. Welcome to this morning's live stream. Please chant with me. Oopsie. 1, 2, oopsie. Having some trouble with my coordination. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's make relax bold and let's underline notice because that's how I roll. Together, as we relax into our exhalation, whatever intention we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as non-graspable as a vast empty void. So the 1-syllable equivalent of intention is will. Om mani mimi yung, 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 om mani mimi yung. And let us relax into spontaneous awareness and release. Notice how this gal, the color of a cumulus cloud, appears to be actively sporting a tantric union. This reminds us of spontaneity. Notice the manner in which her partner, the color of the azure sky, appears to be passively savoring the same tantric union. This reminds us of being centered. The team of centered spontaneity is key. For when our choices, utterances, and deeds effortlessly flow from love's centered spontaneity that is generated by mindfulness and meditation, our lives can be rather blissful. Together, as we relax into our exhalation, whatever cognition we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as non-graspable as a vast empty void. Our job is not to blank our mind. Our job is not to shove away feelings or intentions or thoughts or memories or imaginings. Our job is to notice whatever appears to be cartwheeling across the stage of our mind and to relax and to release and to make peace with the arrival or presence or departure of all that we experience. Om mani mimi yung, 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 om mani mimi yung. When we receive bad instructions, that confuses passive mindfulness for active concentration and passive meditation for active analysis. We overuse our prefrontal cortex, causing our amygdala to light up, the seat of anxiety and aggression, which sucks. However, when we replace the active concentration with the passive mindfulness that comes from merely accessing our sympathetic nervous system during our inhalation. And when we replace the active analysis with the release that comes from accessing our parasympathetic nervous system effortlessly during our exhalation, instead of our amygdala lighting up. This thing lights up. This thing that looks like a catcher's mitt. This thing that functions as the hub of our mirror neurons, the seat of empathy and compassion and love. This is why artists draw. All good one mother and father as beautiful, as a way of communicating love. Or in other words, it is love that makes us attractive. It is aggression that makes us fearsome. And now you know why the meditation archetype, the elements of the meditation archetype are depicted as naked, beautiful, and copulating, both actively and passively, as well as being translucent. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever recollection we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as non-graspable as a vast empty void. Om Mani Mimi Yung, 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 Om Mani Mimi Yung. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever imagination we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as non-graspable as a vastum divine. Om mani mimi yung mani mimi yung om mani mimi yung mani mimi yung om mani mimi yung mani mimi yung om mani mimi yung mani mimi yung. Let us transcend the illusion of samsara and nirvana's vertical duality by metaphorically inviting all the real or imagined Buddhas, their paradises, and their denizens to dwell in the 84,000 pores of our skin, thus practicing the body mandala of duality's awareness and non-duality's release. Om mani mimi yung mani mimi yung om mani mimi yung mani mimi yung om mani mimi yung mani mimi yung om mani mimi yung mani mimi yung. Let us bring the spontaneous play of mind into the path of awareness and letting go. Om Mani Mimi Yung Mani Mimi Yung Om Mani Mimi Yung Mani Mimi Yung Om Mani Mimi Yung Mani Mimi Yung Om Mani Mimi Yung Mani Mimi Yung. As you vulnerably perceive sights, sounds, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like, may you find the bliss in each of them. Or may their bliss find you. Like a puppy who's convinced you have snackies. Together as a team, let us meditate as Let us bring Lama Kyano's figurative practice of calling the teacher as from afar into energy work's path of bliss and letting go. So, Padmasambhava represents us. Chenrei Zig, or Avalokiteshvara, represents teacher. Let us invite real or imagined Guru Avalokiteshvara to the crown of forehead, that in the union of bliss and letting go we may train. Om Mani Mimi Yung, 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 Om Mani Mimi Yung. Let us turn our attention to the outer set of preliminary practices from a certain point of view. Let us courageously exercise the vulnerability to notice others' stress, that the muscle of empathy we may train. Om mani mimi yung, 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 om mani mimi yung. Instead of torturing ourselves with the fear of karma, may we view interdependence as the opportunity for our love to lighten the loads of others. Om mani mimi yung, 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 om mani mimi yung. Rather than torment, so please chant with me. Rather than torment ourselves with the dread of death, may we view how ever-changing one and all there is nothing permanent to grasp. I'm going to do a quick edit because, of course I am. Okay, thank you for your patience. My goodness. Rather than torment us with the dread of death, may we view how impermanence makes of grasping and absurdity with the words, ever-changing when in all there is nothing permanent to grasp. Om Mani Mimi Yung, 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 Om Mani Mimi Yung. Instead of neurotically straining to make the most of each precious meditation opportunity, we could simply flow from mindfulness and meditation's generation of centered spontaneity. Om Mani Mimi Yung, 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 Om Mani Mimi Yung. Let us train in the inner set of preliminary practices as described by Zalpatrul Rinpoche in his final meditation manual. I assure you, this is a radical departure from the view of patriarchy. In our compassion may we long to free all beings from the toxic tyranny of ever. Hating, craving, and clinging, metaphorically known as the three mental poisons. Om Mani Mimi Yung, 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 Om Mani Mimi Yung. What is the key to mindfulness? Every time we inhale, thanks to our sympathetic nervous system, we are wired to perceive, vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. How do we keep our klutzy Urkel of a brain from hindering this? By asking it to silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this during each inhalation. The essence of meditation is to rely upon our parasympathetic nervous system during each exhalation to physically relax and mentally release. How do we get our Urkel of a brain to cooperate? By asking it to silently, mentally, and passively recite the one-syllable verb ease during each exhalation. In our pragmatism, may our liberation of all others be fueled. Let's replace the word others with beings. Let's spell it properly. There we go. In our pragmatism, may our liberation of all beings be fueled by our reliance on the Buddha's example, instructions, and students, described by the metaphor of the three wish-fulfilling jewels. Om Mani Mimi Yung, 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 Om Mani Mimi Yung. So exercise is great. And what I like to do at the end of every practice session is do some Tibetan style Buddha bowing while basically silenced by whispering the essentialized version of these last two contemplations. May we free all through the three jewels. I try not to do it superstitiously. I try to do it in a fun way. And that's what I recommend for you as well. Rather than squander our time and energy in defensiveness, how much wiser could it be to learn our mistakes and lessons that effortlessly flow from mindfulness and meditation-centered spontaneity? Om Mani Mimi Yung Mani Mimi Yung Om Mani Mimi Yung Mani Mimi Yung Om Mani Mimi Yung Mani Mimi Yung Om Mani Mimi Yung Mani Mimi Yung. A life squandered in vying and greed leads not to peace and fulfillment. Better to live in cooperation and generosity. Add lives and made this mind shoot out crowns. Cleansing, changing, increasing, and giving my stuff to all beings of nirvana and samsara. Om Mani Mimi Yung 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 Om Mani Mimi Yung. Let us bring the yoga of figuratively blending with the guru, also known as Lama Naljor, into energy work's path of bliss and letting go. Let us invite real or imagined Lama Chenrezig to our heart mind, that in the union of bliss and letting go we may train. Om Mani Mimi Yung, 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 Om Mani Mimi Yung. Let us view letting go through a philosophical lens as we bring the illusion of... Oopsie, supposed to just explain this, not chant it. Let us view letting go through a philosophical lens as we bring the illusion of the horizontal duality of us and them into the dance of impermanence and interdependence known as Madhyamaka's yoga of inconceivability. Rather than indulge our controlling tendencies with the follies of visualization, emotion, magic, and belief, we could just recite these wise words in harmony with our breathing and allow our subconscious to do the heavy lifting. Let us sidestep the rigidity that confuses metaphors for statements literal, and relax into the flexibility that savors the chance explaining metaphors as similes. Whoops, look at that. All visible circumstances or thoughts could be as impermanent and interdependent, as if they could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into this body or form. Come, let us unpack this. We can use the verb melt as a metaphor of impermanence. We can use the verb absorb as a metaphor of interdependence. Rather than speaking dogmatically, we can use the soft verb could be rather than absolutely is. We are using figures of speech because animals on this planet have evolved to think symbolically. Now we're going to take all these words and squish them down to just 6 syllables, which we're going to recite silently and mentally and passively, divided between our inhalation and our exhalation. So it works out that the chanting is simile and the silent is metaphor because, conservation of syllables and all that. So we're short on time, so let's skip the mantra at this point. All sensual bodies or forms could be as impermanent and interdependent, as if they could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into this communication or speech. All resounding interpersonal speech could be as impermanent and interdependent, as if it could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into this awareness or mind. All lucid minds could be as impermanent and interdependent, as if they could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into a vast empty void. Like the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which, although tantalizing to the eye, could be non-graspable to the hand. This is our final silent meditation of the morning, so let's make it count. I'm going to pause for a moment to photograph the page number so I know where to begin the next session. Let's see. Camera. Thank you for your patience. Splendid. Let's seal this morning's practice by percussively chanting loving wishes for universal enlightenment and well-being. May all minds of all beings lucid yet void now be as enlightened as a Buddha's mind symbolized by a one-syllable bija. May all speech of all beings resounding yet void now be as loving as a Buddha's speech symbolized by a multi-syllable mantra. May all forms of all beings sensual yet void now be as healthy as a Yidam archetype depicted in Buddhist statuary. May all lots of all beings appearing yet void now be as fortunate as a pure land of law depicted in Buddhist paintings. May every meditation teacher truly understand the Buddhist teachings and practice master as well as teach him generously, lovingly, and wisely in the manner of centered spontaneity. May all meditation teachers spontaneously receive generous patrons, enthusiastic students, as well as devoted apprentices. And may many Dharma centers likewise be successfully planted, nurtured, and supported. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 9¼ hours, I would very much like to return to today's evening meditation class and group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.